So now what we want to do is we want the background not to change random colors, right, the way that it is, but instead to flip-flop back and forth. Like the first time you click, it'll be black. The second time you click, it'll be white. Then black and white, black and white, black and white, and flip-flop back and forth. Okay. So how can we get this done? Well, we're not going to be using this array anymore, so let's go ahead and get rid of that guy. We're not going to be using a random color anymore, right? So let's get rid of that guy. What we want to do is we want to do the background to be black on the first click, and we want it to be white on the second click, and we want it to be black on the third click, white on the fourth click, and so on, over and over and over again. Right? So basically, sometimes we want to do this, and sometimes we want to do that. So how do you have your program make a decision? Comes back to the three fundamentals of programming that we went over earlier, right? Variables, branches, and loops. If you want to save a value somewhere, you need to save it in a variable because that's the only place you could possibly save a value. If you want to repeat a block of code, you need to use a loop because that's the only way that you can repeat a block of code however many times you want. Now, if you want your program to make a decision, what's the only way to do it is to use a branch. Right? So we need to have an if statement in here. So if something is true, then do this. And we could say else do that. Okay. There's only two choices here. Either we're going to make it black or we're going to make it white. So this is the way it goes. And now the question is what is the Boolean expression that we're going to use so that it will execute line 13 on the first click, and I'll execute line 15 on the second click. Then I'll execute line 13 on the third click, then 14 on the fourth click. Right? Well, what we need to use is what we call the modulo operator. And let me go ahead and show you here. Modulo is the percent sign. Okay, so it's modulo. And short for modulo, we say mod is the percent sign. And what does mod do? Well, mod, let me put here, returns the remainder. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at some examples here. Let's do 1 mod 2. Right? So what does 1 mod 2 do? It does 1 divided by 2. Now, how many times does, this is basically what it's saying is how many times does 2 go into 1? This might be easier on a sketchbook. So let me come over here to the sketchpad. And so we got 1 mod, whoa, that's a big mod, mod 2. And what does that mean? It means 1 divided by 2. And what does that mean? That means how many times does 2 go into 1? Right? And so how many times does 2 go into 1? It goes into it 0 times. We do 0 times 2, which is 0. We subtract, we get 1, and that 1 gets placed up here as the remainder, right? Remainder of 1. Okay, and that's what modulo returns. It returns the 1. Okay, so 1 mod 2 is equal to 1. Now the question here is, what is 2 mod 2 equal to? Well, 2 mod 2 means 2 goes into 2 how many times? So we get 2 divided into 2. It goes into it once. 1 times 2 is 2. We subtract. We get 0. That 0 climbs up here as the remainder of 0. So 1 mod 2 is equal to 0. Right? Now the question is what is 3 mod 2? What is 4 mod 2? What is 5 mod 2? And what you'll notice is that when you divide by 2, like we're doing here with this mod, you only have 2 possibilities. Either the remainder is going to be 1, or the remainder is going to be 0. Alright, so right here on 3 divided by 2, or 3 mod 2, it's how many times does 2 go into 3? That's 1 time. And after you do that, how many are left over? Well, it's 1, right? So the remainder here is 1. What about 4 mod 2? That means how many times does 2 go into 4? That's 2 times. And that leaves what remainder? that means that leaves a 0 remainder, right? So we get 0. And then how many times does 2 go into 5? It goes into 5 2 times. Right? And what's the remainder? Well, the remainder that's left over is 1. So mod returns 1. Mod returns the remainder. All right? So what can we say if I give you this expression right here? What if I give you an expression that says x mod 2 equals 0? What can I say about x, right? If x mod 2 is equal to 0, then I could say x is a blank, right? Else, x is a blank. Well, what can we say about all of these numbers where mod 2 equals 0? What can we say about these guys? Right, and if I had 6 mod 2 would also equal 0. Right? Well, what we can say about these guys is that they are even numbers. What we could say about these guys where mod 2 equals 1 is we could say that those guys are odd numbers. Right? So that's what we could say here. X is an even number. Here, we could say x is an odd number. All right? And that's what we're going to be using in our program. So let's come back to our program. What we're going to do is we're going to keep our count variable. And let's go ahead and use that guy. We're going to use count. And every time we click, we want to increase count. So plus equals 1. All right? And count is going to be counting like basically our clicks. So what I can say here is I could say if count mod 2 is equal to 0, then make the background color black. Right? Now, if I do that, what is the background color going to be on the first click? Well, we run the program, count's equal to 0. Right? It comes down here to main. On main, it listens for the click. I click on the screen and it runs click. So it runs this function definition here. What's count equal to? It's still equal to 0. It hasn't changed the value yet. Right? Then it comes here and checks the if. And if 0 mod 2 is equal to 0, now is 0 mod 2 equal to 0? Well, if we divide 2 into 0, we get 0 times. And then the remainder is 0. Right? So 0 mod 2 is equal to 0. That's true. So it's going to make our background black. And then when it finishes doing that, it's going to increase count by 1. So now count's going to be equal to 1. We click again. It's going to come here. It's going to check, is this true? Is 1 mod 2 equal to 0? Well, no, because when 2 goes into 1, it leaves a remainder of 1. Right? So it's going to do the else, and it's going to change our background color to black. Then we're going to increase count to 2. We click again, and 2 mod 2 is equal to 0. That's true. So you could see here that by using mod 2 equals 0 in our Boolean expression, we can flip-flop back and forth, because this is going to be true if count is an even number or 0. This is going to be false if count is an odd number, or is an odd number. It's going to be false, and we're going to make it white. Right? And so modulo is used often in computer science, but 95% of the time, modulo is used exactly the way that we see it here. It's to check if a number is even or odd. All right? And this is how we can get our, let's go ahead and run it and see if it works. And this is how we're going to get our screen to flip-flop back and forth between white and black. So I click once, it should be black. I click again, it should be white, black, white, black, white. So now it flip-flops back and forth based on the numbered click that I click. On the first click, it makes it black. Second click, it makes it white. Third click, it makes it black. Fourth click, it makes it white. And why? Because we are using our modulo operator.